Hi everyone, Pau here again, and today is the ninth book of my 52 book challenge, wherein I plan to read one book a week or 52 books in a span of a year or 52 weeks. So I'm very excited to share with you this book, which is entitled The Like Switch by Jack Schafer. So for those of you who are new in watching this, every week, every Sunday, I summarize non-fiction books, and hopefully you learn a lot. If you want to know more of my previous summaries, please search YouTube, search Paulo Balinas, and like and subscribe. Would really appreciate that. So without waiting anymore, let's go on to our key takeaways. So as usual, I have five key takeaways from this Like Switch book. And what's good about this is it's actually written by an ex-FBI agent, wherein based on his studies on psychology, on human psychology, his experience as an FBI detective agent, he was able to decode what are the factors that help us influence a person, attract people, and win people over to our side. So he was able to decode it. And there are a lot of components in the book, but I wanted to focus on these five key takeaways. So let's start with the first one, which is the friendship formula. So according to Jack, the gaining a friend or building closeness to a person can be subcompartmentalized into three key components. The first one is proximity, frequency, and intensity. So let's go for the first one first, proximity. So according to Jack, the more we're exposed to an individual, the more we see him or her, we're exposed to the same environment, tendency is we tend to like that person, mainly because we tend to be more accustomed to that person, constant exposure. If we see him, we kind of consider him sort of a friend or an acquaintance, right? The second one is frequency. So how often do we actually see that person? How long, is our engagement with that person, and the time that we keep in contact with that person. So basically, an example would be if you're an office mate, right? Tendency is since you're in the same office, you see each other every time, you have lunch together frequently. The more often you see each other, the more often that you hang out with each other, tendency is you have a stronger bond with each other, right? And the last one is intensity. So you may not see each other frequently, you may not, hang out that often, but the degree of intensity that you have with that person you're talking to has a huge impact as well in your friendship formula. So, for example, if you have a long lost friend, high school, a high school friend, right? Growing up, you were very tight, but because of distance, you weren't able to catch up that often. And then you suddenly meet up in a bar or you have a quick coffee because of the time that you spend together, rather than frequent, you have a longer time spending with that person. The conversations are deeper, are more emotionally invoking. So basically, that intensifies your friendship with that specific person. So one example is, you may, a couple, for example, you may frequently see each other in the household. You may, be together in the same bed, sleep together. But with the lack of intensity, this weakens your relationship between the spouse, between husband and wife, right? So there needs to be a balance in terms of the proximity, being regularly exposed to that person, frequency, how often do you actually see yourself with that person, or see that person rather, and intensity in terms of the quality of your engagement, your conversations. Is it shallow conversations or is it deep conversations? So these three components help build or strengthen your relationship and builds the friendship or the bond with that specific person. So I like it, the friendship formula. So the second one is getting noticed before a word is spoken. So basically, his analogy here is his explanation of this rather is words. we are able to communicate more with our body language, our gestures. So we're able, subconsciously, as human beings, we send friend or foe signals. So basically, this can be done through our body language, our gesture. So he broke it down into friend signals and foe signals. So the friend signals is, for example, um, if you're in a hallway, right? The mere raising of eyebrows, like acknowledging the person's presence or a head tilt, a smile, keeping eye contact, having that sense of openness, signals that you are a person of good intention, you're friendly, which makes you more likable. So key takeaway here is if you want to be likable, if you want to have more friends, you have to be conscious of your body gestures. You have to be conscious of your facial expressions to release that sense of friendliness to other people. So there's also the opposite of it. We're in the faux signal. So for example, if you squint your eye, if you subconsciously roll your eyes, especially this happens when a person is talking about something you're not interested in or you have a different view on, tendency is you roll the eyes, right? Frowning and so on and so forth. So the key takeaway here is we need to understand these signals, these body language gestures that we may not be conscious of. And if we want to be more likable, we need to send more friend signals and try to suppress the faux signals. So yeah. The second one is mirroring. So this is very impactful, powerful, especially if you're in sales or any negotiation or if you want to get liked in general. So whenever you try to do it subtly, they say that if you mirror a person's body language, there is a bias that he or she would tend to like you, right? I don't know why. But for example, if a person you're talking to has his hand on his chin, you try to uh, copy what he or she is doing. If she removes it, try to remove it as well. But don't do it so obvious that he may feel awkward or he or she may feel awkward, right? So you try to mirror his or her body language. This builds the connection between you two and increases your him or her liking you, right? The third one is touch. So you notice politicians, they love to shake hands, they love to hold your arm, your elbow. Tendency is if you introduce another sense, right, aside from the stimulating their eyes and their ears to the words and the gestures that you say, you try to, whenever you're talking to a person, try to give a slight touch, maybe in the arm, the elbow. Tendency is people would feel your warmth, your friendliness, and tend to like you better, right? So again, key takeaway number two is there are a lot of gestures, signals through body language that we are able to express. It's good to be conscious of this to increase our likability, right? The third one is the golden rule of friendship. So I think it's nothing new, but it's good to call out, right? Wherein, according to Jack, the golden rule of friendship is make people feel better of themselves. So instinctively, as human beings, we want to feel good of ourselves, right? So what better to make a person feel good from himself, right? By if a person you're talking to is solely focused on you, right? Wherein the spotlight is focused on the center of attention is focused on you. So tendency is because so much attention is giving to you, you would like the person you're talking to. Haven't we all been in that situation wherein we had a conversation with the person, but after, in retrospect, when we analyze what did we talk about, and then you realize that you enjoyed the conversation. However, 80% of the conversation was done by you, right? But because you were able to be the center of attention, you tended to like that person as well. So again, what are the tricks, tactics on how to make people like you using this golden rule of friendship, right? So again, focus on the other person in any conversation. Try to be curious about this person, ask him or her questions, make her feel that you're really interested to know more about him or her and help him or her do more of the talking. The second one is another tool is the primacy effect. So I discussed this during the past book summary I did in terms of the biases. So primacy effect is it would be to your advantage if ever you had a warm introduction, right? Because the first impression you set tends to stick. Like for example, if I introduce to you a friend of mine, I gave a good introduction. Like this guy is very good, smart, intelligent, hardworking, right? Because of my priming before meeting the guy, you tend to have this bias or this good memory of him already instilled in your mind. So because of this, you tend to be more receptive. You tend to like that person more, right? As opposed to if I introduce the guy in a very bad manner, like this guy used to swindle a lot of people. This guy has a very bad reputation, very boastful, very conniving. So because of this, you tend to put your guard up and not like this person. So again, it's called the primacy effect. You try to set a good impression, and if possible, try to get a warm introduction by someone he already knows. The third one is try to ask a favor from that specific someone. What's interesting about this is, if a person doesn't like you, try to ask a small favor, right? Mainly because subconsciously, if ever we do a favor for a person, we feel that, this person is a friend, right? So, for example, a strategy there is as simple as asking the person to watch your drink. If ever you're in a bar, can you please watch my drink, right? This actually builds that sense of friendship because, again, subconsciously, if ever we do a favor for a person, we recognize or categorize that person as a friend. So, weirdly enough, when we ask a favor, it would be actually to our benefit because the person will like us. And the last one is empathic statement. So rather than it's making presumptive statements about their emotional state. So how is that example? So for example, instead of asking, uh, you had a good day, right? It's better to position yourself as if you already know how he or she feels, right? So rather than ask, having a good day, it would be better say, so you look like you're having a good day today. You look like you're having fun, right? So because of this, it makes them have that sense of empathy that you empathize for them, meaning that you feel how they're feeling, you understand their wavelength, and the tendency is they would like you more, right? Okay, so the fourth one, that's why I really love this about the book, the laws of attraction. So again, it can be used whether in looking for a spouse or becoming likable in general, right? So there's a law of attraction that he mentioned here. The first one is law of common interests. So we're drawn to people who have the same interests as us, right? So if ever he says that he's an accountant, and then you're not an accountant, rather than lie, which isn't really a good thing to do, you try to think, is there any conversation points that I can relate to him becoming accountant, right? So for example, if my father was an accountant, oh, good, you're an accountant, my father was an accountant too. So try to look for that leveled ground, that common interest that you have between him, the information he shared, and something that you experience or your friends experience and so on. Look for that common interest. The second one is law of attribution. So, for example, if you're looking for a raise or for an incentive, right? The best time to approach your boss is when he or she is in a good mood. Because tendency is, through attribution, they associate you with the current emotional state that they are in. So again, if they are in a good mood, tendency is they would also have good feelings towards you. So try to avoid, try to avoid people or first time getting to know a person if that person's a bad mood. The third one is law of reciprocity. Law of reciprocity. So basically, where we have a feeling of indebtedness if ever we receive something from a person, right? So if ever we do a good gesture, tendency is that person has the indebtedness to repay the favor. So, for example, treating a person for lunch, the mere simple gesture of doing that, tendency is, I feel indebted to you, and I must return the favor. Hence, increases the likability of you. The fourth one is law of self-disclosure. So again, it's also good to be to show some vulnerability, meaning we could share, be open about our flaws, our challenges, and so on and so forth. But of course, uh, it's not advisable that you say everything in the get-go, like disclose all of your skeletons in your closet, if any, right? So it's better to follow the Hansel and Gretel strategy. Basically, through breadcrumbs, right? So disclose information as time progresses with that conversation with that person, right? The next one is law of personal attractiveness. So basically, we need to dress well, stand upright, smile, mainly because we are biased to like someone who is attractive, appealing to the eyes. Sad to say, right? But yeah, we are biased towards people who are physically attractive. So we need to dress the part, look the part, talk the part, and so on. Law of association. So again, if we want to be viewed as someone successful, we need to associate ourselves with successful people because we are gonna be perceived as successful as well by simply associating ourselves with other successful people. Law of availability, the next one is unavailability drives mystery and attraction due to scarcity. So again, especially for the girls, haven't you always been attracted to guys who were kind of mysterious at first, but as the conversation, uh, went on, you got to like the person more, right? Mainly because there's some attractiveness or likability with a sense of mystery. So if ever try to embed this, try to uh, have that level of mystery amongst the people you're talking to, and increase your likability. The last two is law of the rocky road. So basically, sometimes we like a person even though if it got off on a rough start. So if you are a fan of romantic comedies in Netflix, right? It's one of the common plots is a boy meets a girl, and then the girl doesn't like the guy at first because he's such a jerk, and then eventually they end up together, right? Mainly because we tend to like a person who maybe did not like us at first. We tend to want to win that person's attraction. We want to win that person's attention. And eventually, build the attraction between the person you're talking to. And the last one is law of complementary. So basically, as human beings, we love to receive compliments. We're vain in nature, and we love to receive compliments. So for you to increase your likelihood, your likability rather, don't be shy in giving away compliments, but don't overdo it to the point that people will view it as inauthentic. So one of the strategies that he mentioned is if ever you could give a compliment in a third party perspective. So how is that? So for example, rather than saying that you're very beautiful, right? Um, you could frame it in a way that I heard from so and so that so and so is attracted to you. A lot of people in the office are attracted to you, or so on, right? So try to give out compliments, but only when it's due, and also have a mixture of third party compliments, so as to not be coming off as inauthentic. And the last one is building closeness. So he came up with so how can you actually build closeness within a person you're talking to, a friend, and so on. So he had an acronym called C.A.R.E. So one is compassion, two is active listening. Active listening is whenever he or she is talking, maintaining that eye contact, asking questions, just to have that general sense of feeling that you're actually interested in what he or she is saying. Reinforcement is, reinforcing the good and calling out the bad. So what does that mean? So if he or she does something well or makes an achievement, make sure you reinforce the good behavior, you give a compliment, you recognize the achievement, you give a congratulatory message, and of course, the opposite, if ever the bad, you gotta call it out. And lastly is empathy. Empathy meaning, like I mentioned earlier, you empathize with a person, you try to understand what he or she is feeling, and level with that person's feeling, and try to sympathize, empathize with that person. One of the strategies here is the adversarial approach. I think if you work in a corporate job, very applicable. It's very applicable because whenever, for example, especially me, I'm very strong-willed, right? If I have an idea, I want to make it happen. But tendency is, if you don't, it's not the case that you always see eye to eye with your manager, with your peers, and so on and so forth, right? Tendency of most people is we try to go you versus I, my idea versus yours, right? However, the challenge with this strategy is that it promotes a win-lose situation wherein winner takes all. If you win, you get all the glory. If I lose, I'm humbled down, right? So there's what you call the cognitive dissonance, wherein we have conflicting views. So one of the strategies to rather build an enemy and build an ally, rather than build an enemy and convert him or her to an ally, try to, rather than impose your idea that this is the best idea, I think I'm a genius, try to come up with a way that, you know uh, not a strong approach, but basically if you ask an advice from that person, or ask him or her opinion, this, for example, to give a clear example, if I felt that the current operations or the current day-to-day task that, the marketing strategy that we're doing in work, rather than tell my boss, you're doing everything wrong, tendencies that the reaction of the boss would be defensive. No, this, he would justify, right? He or she would justify the reason why he or she's right. So rather than outright say it's wrong, it would be rather better to come up with a suggestion. Hey boss, I was thinking over the weekend that our current strategy is good, but I need your advice on something. What if we did it this, that way, and so on and so forth? So because of this, it promotes us from being an adversarial approach to a more of a mentor-mentee approach. Because of this, it makes them feel good. It makes them feel that you need them, and increases your likability. So again, that's how to build closeness with the care, actively listening, empathizing with the person, and a few strategies to build your closeness. And again, finally, the last key takeaway summarizing. So the friendship formula, getting noticed before a word is spoken, the golden rule of friendship, laws of attraction, and building closeness. So with that, that ends the ninth book summary of the 52 book challenge. So hopefully I complete it all. Thank you for all of those listening in. I really appreciate it. And if you liked what you listened to, I have a lot more summaries in my YouTube page. So hopefully you visit youtube.com, search Paulo Balinas, and click the subscribe button and view my other videos as well. So again, I focus more on business books, self-development books, and hopefully you learn a lot. So rather than read it yourself, saves time by simply watching the videos. So again, thank you very much, and I'm excited to for next week's book. Hope to see you again. Like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a great day.